is it that the great sages, who were completely conversant with religious principles, desired to curse King Vena, who himself carried the rod of punishment, and thus awarded him the greatest punishment, Brahmashapa? Purport. It is understood that the king is able to give punishment to everyone, but in this case it appears that the great sages punished him. The king must have done something very serious, otherwise how could the great sages, who were supposed to be the greatest and most tolerant, still punish him in spite of their elevated religious consciousness? It appears also that the king was not independent of the Brahminical culture. Above the king there was the control of the Brahmanas, and if needed the Brahmanas would dethrone the king or would kill him, not with any weapon, but with the mantra of a Brahmashapa. The Brahmanas were so powerful that simply by their cursing one would immediately die. Kim Brahma Vena Udishya Brahma Dandamayuyujan Dandabrata Dhare Ragi Munayo Dharma Kovida. Vidura also inquired, how is it that the great sages, who were completely conversant with religious principles, desired to curse King Vena, who himself carried the rod of punishment, and thus awarded him the greatest punishment, Brahmashapa? So Brahmashapa is the ultimate weapon. It is more powerful than any weapon that is utilized by any Kshatriya. Kshatriyas have many weapons. They have weapons which are of incredible power. They can use special rope weapons, special crescent weapons, mountain weapons, arrow weapons. Ultimately, they can even use the weapon of Lord Brahma, Brahmastra. But the Brahma Shapa, or the curse of the Brahmana, is more powerful than all those weapons. This was displayed, as probably you are knowing, in the battles between Vasishtha Muni and Vishwamitra. Vasishtha Muni was living in the forest. Vishwamitra was traveling through one day, and he was received very nicely by Vasishtha. But during the course of conversation, although they were great friends, it was noticed by Vishwamitra that Vasishtha had a Kamaduk cow who would give all desirable things, unlimited milk. And then Vishwamitra, being lusty to have this cow, kings sometimes are lusty, so he asked, "Can you please give me this cow? I want this cow." And Vasishtha said, "No, you can have anything else. I will give you anything else, but not this cow, because I have taken the vow to protect her. And besides that, she is giving me all of the elements I need for my sacrificial performances. In order to do the proper homas or sacrificial performances, one has to have plenty of ghee, and the cow is giving plenty of ghee. So you cannot have." So Vishwamitra was very upset and was demanding. And Vasishtha said, "No, you absolutely cannot have." Then Vishwamitra sent some men to steal away the cow by force. And then the cow came to Vasishtha and begged, "Please, you kindly protect me." And then Vasishtha destroyed that whole army with mantra. There is a mantra that you can use, which we're not going to teach you, which you can use to destroy others. Special mantra. Brahmanas know it only. So, and only a Brahmana could say it anyway. Even if you knew the mantra, it wouldn't do you any good. Because you have to have the certain kind of Brahminical tejas or power in order to use that mantra, and then it is possible to wipe out all kinds of inimical elements. So, with one word, he wiped out the whole army. And Vasishtha came because Vishwamitra came. He had a special benediction. He had some 20, 30 weapons which were given to him by various demigods because he was so powerful as a king. And he was throwing each and every one of these weapons, which were invincible. And each time, Vasishtha would just simply knock them away with a mantra. Each time, just wipe them out. These big, big weapons from the demigods. So Vishwamitra became very, very depressed. How is it that he's stronger than me? I'm supposed to be stronger than everyone. He was the big, big king at the time. But then he understood that this power of the Brahmana is stronger than the power of the Kshatriya. That the power of the Kshatriya may be great, but the Brahmana's power is much stronger than the Kshatriya's power. Therefore, he decided, because he was interested in power, I'm going to become a Brahmana. Of course, that's the completely wrong way to do it. That's completely the wrong way. If you want to become what happened in the Polish translation department? Who's doing it? Okay. If you want to be a Brahmana, the absolute wrong reason to do it is to want to do it because of getting power. Because Brahmanas are not interested in power. According to the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Brahmanas are interested in samodamo, sacham, socham, shantir, ajavam, all these nice qualities which are there in the Brahminical personalities, which are peacefulness and control of the mind and senses. This creates peacefulness, simplicity, tolerance, devotion, truthfulness, realized knowledge, practical knowledge, theoretical knowledge. All of these different forms of knowledge are there in the Brahmana. He's not interested in power on this platform of physical force, but he will be very powerful on the intellectual platform, and thus he will be able to dominate others intellectually. And that is very good, because that is what he should do. The Brahmana should be the dominant factor in the society intellectually, and he should direct the Kshatriya, who should listen to him, because the Brahmana knows better than a Kshatriya. Therefore, it is his essential duty to instruct the Kshatriya what he should do, how he should do it. What he should do, how he should do it. So, the Brahmanas, that is their business in the human society. So, Vasishtha, his business was not to fight, but because he was being attacked, he fought. Only because to defend this cow. This is the religious principle. He accepted the duty to defend her, so he did it. But Vishwamitra, he was thinking, I'm going to become a Brahmana. So he started to meditate, and one turn after another, he went through all the different stages of Brahmana. He came up from a Rishi to a Rajashi to a Rishi to a Brahmarshi, Maharshi. He came up higher. But this fighting business between him and Vasishtha never stopped. They were going on fighting for a long time. Sometimes you can read in the Bhagavatam how they were fighting so much so that they cursed each other, and they both became pigeons. And after they both became pigeons, they went on fighting as pigeons. You would think that two pigeons, they would at least go around and just go peck some food somewhere and be peaceful. But no, they became pigeons, they were fighting as pigeons too. So this kind of business, power business, is very bad. Because it destroys all the good qualities of spiritual life. This just to simply be interested in power and to utilize power, this is very dangerous. One has to use things only for Krishna. Otherwise, if he uses them against those who are Brahmanas or involved in the Brahminical culture, against devotees or to harm devotees, then all of his Brahminical power becomes a waste. It just becomes, in fact, not a waste. It becomes the cause of his destruction. Therefore, Vena was destroyed because he was using his power of a king, the kingly power, the Kshatriya power, to cause trouble to everybody in the kingdom, including Brahmanas. And as soon as he was causing trouble like that, then his duration of life was reduced, his all good qualities were reduced. Because you cannot do like that. That is completely against all proper principles of behavior. And therefore, when it became too bad, the Brahmanas decided, we've had enough of this fellow. Everybody's had enough of this fellow. We're going to just finish him off. With high-sounding words, they cursed him, and he was finished. Finished immediately. When the Brahmana curses you with his very special mantras, you can just be sure you're going to fall over dead, and that's the end of you. Because those mantras are so powerful, nobody can overcome them. Nobody can overcome them. They're so powerful mantras. So in this way, the Brahminical culture is actually established in the Vedic times. The Brahmanas, they were not just fellows you could push around. If you were acting in an improper way, then you could expect to be cursed. And in this way, it would force you to be on the right line. If you were acting in an improper way against the Brahmana would simply curse you, and then you would find out the hard way how to act properly in Vedic culture. That's very good, because unless you curse a Kshatriya, he's not going to listen to you. You can tell him all kinds of nice, sweet words. You can beg, plead with him. But if he's a thick-headed Kshatriya and just wants to do what he wants to do anyway, then he's not going to listen to all your sweet words. Therefore, the best way you deal with them is you curse them, and then when they're suffering and they lose their sense gratification, then they come to their senses and understand, this man's more powerful than me, I should listen to him. Because that's the way Kshatriyas work. If power is there, then they listen. Otherwise, no power, no listening. That is the nature. It is not a defect. That is the nature. And therefore that nature was utilized in the Varnashram system to make everything very nice and orderly. These persons, these Kshatriyas, are meant for actually making everything very orderly, very peaceful, very calm, very freed from rogues and thieves and rascals. Actually, when Vena was killed, it was a very bad time for the whole society. Because then, he was very powerful, and after he was killed, all the rogues, thieves, rascals, nonsenses of every kind, they came out by the thousands and began to rampage all over the kingdom, and the people were just in total anxiety. Total and complete, absolute anxiety. And therefore the sages were again placed in another serious position. Here, they had interfered with the political affairs of state. They just generally never do that. This is not just the normal brahmanas we're speaking about here. These persons who cursed Vena were not the normal brahmanas who act as ministers in the state, who are teaching in the society. These were not those fellows. They were the rishis. These are persons who have nothing to do with the society's political affairs. They are not ministers of state. They are not busily engaged in the local affairs to give good direction to Kshatriyas. They were living in the forest and just engaged in sacrificial performances. And these rishis are very special because they have extraordinary power, much more so than any ordinary brahmana. So these rishis, they normally never get involved in any political affairs. But they allowed themselves to get involved for the sake of the people, because it was getting ridiculous. But then, after they killed Vena, it was even a worse situation in a sense, because at that time, all the thieves and rogues and rascals were coming out, and the whole society was unprotected because there was no king. Now again, those rishis could just simply curse all of these thieves and rogues, and they would all drop over dead, and there would be no problem in the society. But that again was not what they wanted to do, because that is not what rishis do. And not only that, they were very much afraid of losing their Brahminical power. All of the nice effects that they have gotten, all of the positive effects they have gotten from their sacrificial performances. You know, every time you're throwing ghee in the fire and grains in the fire and offering mantras, this was in previous ages now. Every time you were doing that, then you would get very much potency and, I guess we would call it plus points in spiritual life, and then gradually elevate oneself up to the higher planets. The Mahajana Tapa Sachaloka. You can go there by doing this great sacrifice. Many sacrifices, you do it enough, you go up to the topmost planetary systems of this universe. So every time you curse somebody, then whatever you have accomplished, you lose some. So they are keeping track of how much they are gaining in spiritual achievement, so that they can go up to those planets, and they know the more we curse, then we're going to have to go and do more and more years of sacrifices. So therefore, we don't want to do this business. This is not our business to waste our Brahminical power by just simply cursing thieves and rogues. This is the business of Kshatriyas. They're supposed to control the thieves and rogues by their prowess. Therefore, what to do? So they decided they were going to churn the body of Vena and produce, in the same line as the king, they're going to produce some other nice king who will be able to conquer over these thieves and rogues. Actually, the rishis are like that. They're very clever. They don't waste their time or energy in doing nonsense things in the state. They are busy, simply engaged in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This actually is a very good principle, even though one may have so much power or potency to act in the material world, still a devotee is basically very much interested in doing things for the sake of Krishna. Even though he may have so much abilities. You know, sometimes devotees come from outside engagements. They come from the material world, and they have so many abilities, materialistic kind of abilities. And then they say, we want to engage our abilities in this way, so you kindly allow us to serve Krishna this way. Just like every leader knows that every time somebody comes, generally 2 or 3 out of 5 devotees used to be rock and roll musicians. So then they all want to play rock and roll for Krishna. And then you have to tell them, forget it. Or as Loknath Maharaj calls it, the rolling rock. Tell them, forget this, this is not very Krishna conscious, not going to help you at all. So therefore, why do you bother with these things? So in this way, you may try to use things for Krishna, but unless you are very much advanced in devotional service, you're not able to do those things. Therefore, one has to surrender to Krishna gradually. But then, more and more he finds, what is the use of all of this? Actually, one should do the needful. This is actually the principle which these rishis are working on. Do the needful. The most important spiritual principle of all. For all devotees, for all persons in the Varnashram, especially of the higher rungs of the Varnashram society, Acharya, Brahmana, Rishi, that do the needful is the principle. What is required to be done for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness movement, for the sake of giving people understanding and spiritual life, for the sake of helping others, you do it. Even though it may seem to be a little extraordinary. Just like Prabhupada, when he spread Krishna consciousness movement to the Western world, he did extraordinary things which were never done before. Just like those Vishis, they did an extraordinary thing by killing the king. Generally, this is never done. In fact, in history, we find very few examples of this. In the Bhagavatam, this is the only example of this. When Rishis did such a thing. This is so rare. But it was extraordinary because it's so rare, but that doesn't matter. The principle that is stated here is that do the needful. They had to do it, therefore they did it. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada, he did many extraordinary things in this Krishna consciousness movement. First of all, he was starting to initiate us Malechas Yavanas into the Brahminical order. This is amazing. This is extraordinary. People were unable to understand how this can be done, how you can take those persons who were very fallen and turn them into Brahmanas. But he did it. He was actually turning Malechas, Yavanas, etc. into Brahmanas. So much so that they were spreading Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Then further, he did a really extraordinary thing. He even started initiating ladies into the Brahminical order. Absolutely unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. But this also turned out to be very nice because some of our best preachers, Sankirtan girls are there. They're coming from the ladies. So therefore, actually it was no mistake because they are also, when they preach Krishna consciousness, very highly placed devotees of the Lord. And he did other extraordinary things, one after another. Things which were never done before. Installed so many deities in the Western worlds, made Rathyachas and so many. So extraordinary things are there because do the needful. A society was required. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, you cannot spread Krishna consciousness around the world unless you have an organized society. And when there's an organized society, replete with brahmanas and other organizational aspects, then it will spread. Otherwise it cannot spread. If you go to one person, here, there, preaching something about Krishna, it still you will not spread Krishna consciousness. There must be an organization. And we see it practically. There are so many persons who, out of foolishness or otherwise, want to leave this ISKCON movement and do their own thing. They may try, but they never get very far. And after a short while, you forget about that person. You even forget his name. So, only when you are engaged in the ISKCON society together, then one can actually expand, have the potency to expand this movement all over the world. Otherwise, it is not possible. And that is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he told us like this. There must be this organization like that. And part of the organization means there are Vaishnavas who are totally committed to spreading Krishna consciousness in whatever way is required. They will take any position within the society. They will do anything that is required in order to simply spread this Krishna consciousness movement, because that is the most important thing of all. We don't really mind what position we have to take, just as long as we can take some position to spread Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, although we may have a very nice position, if it is not very much needed to spread Krishna consciousness, what is the use of it? There are so many bureaucrats in the government. The government, they do like this. In order to give employment, and especially to those who are working in the political campaigns, they hire them in the government and give them an office with a plaque on the door and a position. But unfortunately, mainly those positions have no relevance. There's so much bureaucracy piled up on bureaucracy, and very little relevance, actually, to the proper running of a government. Because these are... I just remembered the name of this, and I just realized it's such a Malacha name, I'm not even going to say what it is. Something about a barrel. Those of you who know. So, this kind of way of doing things, which is simply to create positions and have nice, cozy life, this is not in Krishna Consciousness Movement. In Krishna Consciousness Movement, we do not want to just accept some cozy position. We want to always be in the forefront. We want to be in the front lines, fighting for Krishna. Fighting for Krishna. Just like even these rishis, they were not out in the front lines preaching. They were very much contented and happy to be living in the forest and doing their spiritual practices. But in this Krishna Consciousness Movement, if we did that, because of the certain nature of the Western devotees, nowadays all devotees, there would be no success in spiritual life. Therefore, we have to bring ourselves out of this society, bring ourselves out of our very protected society, and go out and distribute Krishna consciousness all around. This is essential for us to do. If we do not do it, then we're going to fall away from Krishna consciousness. If we are not engaged 100% in preaching, then there are other activities which are going to drag us away from Krishna's lotus feet. And therefore it is essential that we take up this preaching activity. We are of a special class. Actually, Prabhupada said Vaishnavas are higher than all of the categories because they can accept any position within the Varnashram society. But of course, we're not all Vaishnavas. That is the unfortunate thing. Prabhupada proclaimed, we mentioned it 2 nights ago, that if they were all Vaishnavas, then why are they going away? Those who are leaving Krishna Consciousness Movement are proving that they are not Vaishnavas. And if you take a history of this movement over time, you'll find more people go away than stay. So therefore, mainly we are dealing with non-Vaishnava, or those who are candidates to become Vaishnavas. Therefore, it is essential that we have this Varnashram organization. Because only through Varnashram organization can one organize people in a proper manner to bring them to the platform of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Prabhupada wanted in each and every temple a Varnashram college. Because when there is such an organization, to train people according to their propensities and to do things which are needed in Krishna consciousness, then there will be a very powerful organization to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And this is absolutely essential, this kind of organization. So, we are trying to gradually train up different classes of men. And it's not so difficult to train up a manager. Managers you can train up. And it's not so difficult to train up a Vaishya. Vaishyas you can train up. It's not so difficult to train up Sudras. You don't even have to train. Everybody becomes immediately qualified to be a Sudra. But Brahmanas, oh, what a problem. To train people to be Brahmanas, such a problem. First of all, who even wants to be trained as a Brahmana? If you tell somebody you have to hear and chant and read and teach, and be clean and very regular in this and that, and then he immediately says, "Oi, I think I'll become a Kshatriya," or something like that. Because it is such a difficulty to actually take up this study of the Shastra, to actually know our philosophy very well, to actually be able to teach it to others. Because teaching is a big difficulty. It's the most difficult thing is to teach others. Yeah. Because people generally don't want to learn, especially here in our Gurukul. Of course, the boys here are very special. But in general, nobody wants to learn. If you are in the normal human society, you will find that all of the people come to the school are absolutely not interested in learning anything. They only learn so far as they need to learn in order to get a grade to pass. Otherwise, they don't care. Maybe when there's some 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 motivated persons in a whole school class who are motivated because they want to become big, rich, successful persons. Otherwise, there's no further motivation than that. To simply learn for the sake of learning, which is the Brahminical quality, this is very rare. Namely, they will learn in order to get a degree, to make big money, to become famous like this. This is some other quality. This is not the Brahminical quality. The Brahmin is not interested in fame. Neither is he interested in profit. Neither is he interested in distinction. He's simply interested in helping others. He wants to learn and teach. This is his quality. And this is very rare. To have someone whose motivations are fixed on that platform is very rare, because mainly people have all kinds of self-motivations. They want to become very powerful, just like Vishwanuja. Or they want to become very famous, a scholar. All these scholars who write so many books, they're very much interested in fame, that everybody shall recognize them for being so intelligent. Or they're very much interested in being distinct in a society of fools. I am a learned man. Or they are very much interested in other kinds of fruitive activities or fruitive results that may come as a byproduct of having knowledge. Sometimes you can make a lot of money that way too. They like the salary. But as soon as you accept the salary, as soon as you are bound to receive a fruitive result for gaining and distributing knowledge, then immediately you have lost your Brahminical platform. You immediately come to some other platform, which is generally the Vaishya Sudra platform. It's even rare nowadays you find somebody who's interested in knowledge to gain power. Even that's rare. Mainly we have persons who are not interested in knowledge for the sake of gaining knowledge. But if we can create in this ISKCON society some actual persons who are interested in spiritual life enough to learn this philosophy backwards and forwards and teach it to others, then the whole human society will run very nicely. Because unless there is a class of man like this, there's no question of peacefulness in a human society. You'll never get peace unless there is a very strict class of men who are teaching others spiritual life. There'll never be peace. Because all Kshatriyas who are engaged in managerial principles will begin to speculate and concoct all kinds of managerial principles simply for the sake of making things run nicely. Which means simply that they create all kinds of ideas or systems on the spot or off the top of their head, simply for the sake of just making things run nicely according to the limited perception right here and now. Short-term manipulation, short-term results. Just like in ISKCON, sometimes we think that corporate structure is very nice. The mundane corporate structure, the structure of mundane corporations. And we create our management structure like that. But actually, that proves that one needs a management structure. So you can take your pick. You can take either Krishna's management structure, which is called Varnashram, or you can take corporate management structure, which is called Malecha life. And then of course, corporate management structure makes a lot of money. But it doesn't make any learned men. It doesn't actually help the human society. And Varnashram may not make a lot of money right away. But over the long period of time, it will make unlimited opulence. Corporate management structure means you have to manipulate the society and practically wring its economic neck to squeeze money out in various ways. And it will be very quickly successful. Fruitive, very quickly successful. But everything else will deteriorate and fall to pieces in due course of time. Whereas, because you're not creating the spiritual knowledge to maintain that society, whereas, if one is engaged in Varnashram structure, the whole society becomes so well organized that gradually it will become unlimitedly opulent. So much so that you won't even know what to do with all this opulence. Everybody will be opulent. Everything will be very peaceful. That is what is going on in all of these Vedic cultures, Vedic societies. Where gradually it is established, the Brahminical culture, who are those persons who are training up our Kshatriyas how to manage, who are allowing the Vaishyas to engage themselves in making an enormous amount of wealth, opulence, and the Sudras who are working and getting well rewarded. So in this way, the whole society will be peaceful. But of course, these are very radical proposals in the modern age. As soon as you say Varnashram to Westerners, they immediately start screaming and yelling and hollering, impossible, impossible, impractical, impractical. Because the only thing a Westerner can understand is a corporate management structure. He cannot understand anything else. But Krishna's management structure must be better than that, because Krishna is God. Sometimes we forget this point, that Krishna is God. We think Krishna is some kind of a manager like me who's not so qualified. Krishna is not so qualified to manage in Kali Yuga as me. Therefore, I need to have the corporate structure, because Krishna's management structure is no longer practical. It was practical in the Vedic times, but now times are different. After all, Krishna only makes management systems which are temporary, you know. He only makes them for time, place, and circumstance. Now it's no longer the same time or the place or circumstance. But actually, this is completely offensive and nonsense thinking. Krishna's management structure is eternal, and it's always proper and always correct for all times. It is not like the new concocted corporate structures are something new either, because there have also been concoctions throughout all time. There have been many Kali Yugas and many other times where persons have accepted other structures and tried to make a success. But they all disappeared. That's why you never hear of them. And the one that's been lasting throughout all that time is this Varnashram structure. Of course, nowadays we have a time when even that is being lost completely everywhere throughout the world. But still, that does not mean that which is replacing it will last. Actually, that which is replacing the Varnashram structure will be destroyed very quickly. You can guarantee on that. Prabhupada guaranteed that. That there's no way the modern society can last. It is a dead-end society, running right off of a cliff, because it has no basis. No basis in knowledge and no basis in spiritual life. Therefore, it is essential. Prabhupada told very clearly, he wrote it and said it, first you establish Varnashram in this ISKCON society, and then you can spread it to the others. People always think, sometimes even our devotees think, that Varnashram is meant for others, because we're all Vaishnavas and we're transcendental. Well, first of all, we're not all Vaishnavas. That is, of course, a very astounding thing to hear, because everybody likes to think we're all Vaishnavas. But Prabhupada said it very clearly in his room, right over there. They're not all Vaishnavas, otherwise why do they go away? First point. And second point, Prabhupada said very clearly also, right here on that road, first you establish it in ISKCON. And then when people see how nice it is running in ISKCON, then they will take it up as well. Then they will take it up as well. Of course, these ideas are not very popular. And you will find as many people to contradict it. But none of them will contradict what Prabhupada says. They will contradict with corporate structures, because they say it's not practical. But actually it is very practical. And the most practical thing of all is to train up Brahmanas. There must be Brahmanas, unless there are first-class persons who actually know our philosophy, and not that they can just give a class once a week. We mean know our philosophy. We know it from top to bottom, every aspect of this philosophy. Then they can preach to scholars and theologians and scientists and people in general, religionists, anybody. They can preach to anybody, anywhere, at any time, and actually capture the mind of the intelligent class of man. That is what we have to do. Just like here now in India, the most important thing is to capture the intelligent class. Prabhupada managed to capture 10 maybe maximum 15 very intelligent Indian devotees, who he's trained up, and they are first class. But now they have to, and the others have to work together to capture the other intelligent persons in this country and make them very Krishna conscious. Because this communism is increasing. And it is essential in these days of communism, nationalism, all kinds of nonsense isms, that we have first-class men from each and every country to become the leaders of the society. Actually, in Switzerland, put the camera down, please, and listen to the class. In Switzerland, Guru Granga once asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, I'm having very much trouble here managing. Can I bring others in to help me manage? And Prabhupada said, no, that is short-term arrangement. You train up local men to become the leaders. And we have actually accepted this principle as much as we can, to try to train up local men to be the leaders. Because this is the way in which things will become very steady over due course of time. Because of nationalism, communism, so many isms. Maybe later it will be different. But right now we are in such a situation. So the main duty is to make first-class persons Krishna conscious and train them up to be first-class leaders. Leaders, preaching leaders. Those who know our philosophy very well and can give it to others. Then the society will be very nice. Then they won't have any leaders like Vena who have to be killed by brahmanas. We don't, sometimes even in our ISKCON society, we have leaders who go completely off. And then our ISKCON Brahminical society has to kill them with big words. We don't want to do that all the time. We want to have first-class brahmanas who can teach and keep on the track our leaders so that they stay Krishna conscious and don't start concocting all kinds of foolish ideas out of sense gratification. We need to keep everybody on the line. And how is that done? It's not done by physical force. It's not done by threats or coercion. Although sometimes when you're dealing with Kshatriyas, you have to use those principles. But basically it's done by giving our philosophy as it is, with great power and potency. Actually going back to Prabhupada's principles. Otherwise there'll be so many concoctions. Personally, I've become very much worried over the last 2 weeks, somehow or another. I've been getting very much fear. Because Prabhupada's original principles are somehow being dissipated, being lost. Just like we were speaking the other night about kirtan. Why Prabhupada was so strict that he didn't want all these other mantras being chanted. He just wanted the Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda and Hare Krishna mantra, and then very special prayers in each and every arti. Why he wanted like that? Because it is the tendency of Kali Yuga man to concoct. So one devotee comes by and then he says, oh, well, this other mantra I learned over here in that other temple somewhere. And then he starts chanting it. And then everybody says, oh, this is a nice mantra. And he starts chanting it. Like all these other mantras that we ever chant. You never heard Srila Prabhupada chant them once. You only heard Prabhupada chant Samsaradava, Kiva Jaya, and Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Hare Krishna, and Govinda Jaya Jaya, and various bhajans on his tapes. You never heard Prabhupada chant any other thing. So where did it come from? Do you know where it came from? I can tell you where each and every one of these mantras came from. They came from the Radha Vallabha temple down there, and they came from the Radha Raman temple over there, and they came from the Gauranga Nagari Sampradaya in Bengal, which is an Upper Sampradaya rejected by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and they came from other rejected Sampradayas. That we don't chant these mantras. Just like this Gaur-Nityananda Bol. This is the famous mantra of the Baal Sampradaya and others like that. Once it was being chanted out here in Mangal Artik, and Prabhupada had me come out and stop the kirtan and forbid that person from leading kirtan again. So there are many things like this. Because you concoct one mantra, or you bring a mantra from this place, this place, outside of ISKCON, then the next generation comes along and says, well, they concocted so many mantras, so let's concoct some ourselves. Then they bring in some more mantras, and then the next generation, we have to establish Krishna consciousness for 10,000 years. Then the next generation comes in and says, well, we got some other mantras here from the, so-and-so Sri Sri temple over here. And then we'll bring in some more mantras, and pretty soon more mantras, and pretty soon more mantras. And then we're just like any other Upper Sampradaya. Bowls, owls, and all the rest of them in Bengal, who never chant Hare Krishna, not once. They chant Nitai Gauranga all day long, but never once do you hear the Hare Krishna mantra from these Sampradayas. Therefore they're rejected. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And Prabhupada wanted to do the same thing. Hare Krishna mantra. Otherwise, you keep expanding it this way, stretching it that way, stretching it this way, stretching it that way. Pretty soon this whole society's finished. It's become watered down, diluted, and finished. Just like there are various other persons pushing Prabhupada's structure this way, that way, expanding it, making it better this way, making it better that way, helping it this way, and destroying the whole thing. Even I have heard it with the philosophy. People are stretching it this way, stretching it that way. It's like here in Vrindavan. Somebody stays here for some years, and here's all the local people speaking this and that about all these holy places, and after a while it becomes bona fide simply because you've heard it enough. That doesn't make it bona fide. There are so many nonsenses that people will tell you. You have no idea if they're true or not true. No one has any idea if they're true or not true. They're more or less rumors. But they become established as fact simply because they were heard before. In this way, traditions are established. You remember that famous example by Acharya Pad about the cat in the basket? Some remember that? I'll tell it again because it's very important. There was once a wedding ceremony, and this one girl was being married to one boy. And during the ceremony, when there was the homa going on, this cat was running all over. Now, if a cat runs all over, it contaminates everything. Therefore, the mother, being a little clever, caught the cat in a basket and put it with a cover on it, so it wouldn't disturb everybody. You know, when you pull a cat out, it starts screaming and so many things. So just put the cat in a basket with a lid on it and left it off to the side, so that nobody would be disturbed. So when that girl grew up, had a daughter, and she was going to get married, then when it came time for the wedding ceremony, she said, alongside the fire, we have to have a cat in a basket. Because when I got married, my mother, she put a cat in a basket and left it by the side of the fire. And from that time on, it became a tradition in that family that every time you got married, you have to have a cat in a basket. In this way, these traditions are established. All these nonsense, foolish things become established as spiritual principles because somebody misunderstood something completely. Yeah? It's a very, very serious thing. Just to change, transform, concoct, manipulate, do these different things. Very, very serious. It actually will destroy this movement. Therefore, we have to be very strict, very strict, straight on. And then everything will go very nicely. This requires some brahmanas who don't deviate from their understanding of the absolute truth. Not because it's popular, not because it looks good, not because it's temporarily successful. They don't change, they don't deviate, they keep everything strict. And they may be unpopular. If during a kirtan, when somebody's chanting this bowl or that bowl, they come up and say, hey, quit it. They may be unpopular. But that's good because it'll train up the future generations to understand that don't go off. Don't start bringing in all these unnecessary, unnatural things which were not brought in by Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, I've given you everything. And why do we need more? From this temple, that temple. We don't need more. We've got already everything. Why should we change it? Why should we expand it? You're not going to make anything better than Prabhupada made, that's for sure. And in certain things, Prabhupada said you can learn this way or that way. Just like an archana. Prabhupada created archana, but he said, like he said, I never lived in the temple. I was never a pujari. So I did not know these things. Therefore, you go he told specifically, you go to this book from the Devananda Math, which was established by Keshava Maharaj, Archana Padati. You take all the principles from there, and then you establish it in our deity worship program. It's like Sutta Goswami, the sages said, you know everything about the essence of the Vedas, but some things you don't know. Anyway, they're probably not very important, so you just tell us what you actually know from your realization. So in a similar way, Prabhupada said, well, in this place or this circumstance, you go find knowledge from here, or you go find knowledge from here. And then it was established, according to Prabhupada's instruction. He didn't forget anything. It's not like he forgot to tell us about this or this or this or this. Prabhupada told us everything. There's no need to go anywhere else to get any other knowledge. This is the essential point. And this is actually the thing here which this Vena, King Vena, this is just what he did. He speculated. It was stated somewhere in some shastra that the king is the sum total of all the demigods. So then he started speculating, because Krishna is the source of the demigods, that I am God, as the king. So with his mystic power, because the king gets mystic power along with the scepter, so he was traveling around through space and commanding the demigods. His speculation was like that. This is what happens. You stretch things, stretch things, stretch things. Pretty soon in our movement, we'll have a movement where everybody thinks he's going to become Gaur Nitai. It doesn't take long to get to that point. To get to the point of impersonalism, it doesn't take very long at all. It's very short steps. 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, and there you are. So therefore, these principles should be reestablished very strongly, in order that we don't have any great deviations, just like this Vena. In order that Krishna doesn't have to send some empowered personality to turn everything upside down and change it all over back to the way it should be again. Because Prabhupada already established everything personally perfectly. So why should we make any changes? Are there any questions? Yes?
You explained one principle, that the Prabhupada was very bold, and that he instituted mantra because the people have a particular culture.
Like what mantra?
Well, he may change the chanting. He may think that the people like this particular chanting better. Haribo, Haribo. They have a particular culture. In other words, or the question would be that this question of time, place, and circumstances, how is it applied now in ISKCON? It's in the Bhagavatam. How is it applied now in ISKCON? So that without so-called, keeping the very strict...
Time, place, and circumstance. Just like, okay, you've got the mantras. All the mantras are there from Prabhupada. So maybe you're in a culture where you can easily go on the street wearing dhotis and everything and make big kirtan down the middle of the street. Huh? Then maybe after a short while the police come and throw you all in jail. Like in England, they have this problem now. I still think they do. They can't go out making big chanting, isn't it? So time, places, then you can get a permission and sit down and chant there, sitting down. That's time, place, and circumstances. You do the first thing you should do. You try it hard. If it works, great. You keep trying. You try to make it work. And if not, then you can make an adjustment to do the next best thing. Prabhupada already gave the best thing. And you may make an adjustment to make the next best thing if something very serious impedes that. That's time, place, and circumstances. But Prabhupada already gave everything. All the programs are already there. One should always try to do what Prabhupada wanted first. And then from that point, one has to make adjustments. And one can always expand it. Once you've got Prabhupada's program together, then of course that automatically implies you can do so many things within that structure. You want more?
I was just thinking in terms of the Gurukul. Sometimes we hear Prabhupada had such a strict program, and that maybe we would have to...
loosen it up.
Yeah.
But then you don't have Gurukul. Just like Prabhupada made the program, then you loosen it up according to time, place, and circumstance. Then the next generation comes and loosens it up some more. The next generation comes and loosens it up some more. And pretty soon, what do you have? Well, you have boys and girls going to a school and learning that the earth is a round ball, flying around in space, and the sun is standing still, and these kind of silly things. And this way everything's finished. And they're smoking in the bathrooms.
You were saying that if something doesn't work, but someone may become confused. In other words, even what Prabhupada was trying to apply was so difficult for so many years, he kind of maintained...
Just like book distribution was so difficult for so many years. I remember once in 1971 I sold something like 3 Krishna books at a Sunday feast, those big first ones. And everybody was just like singing my glories all over the temple. That was the biggest sale in history. 3 Krishna books. So difficult it was to distribute books. For how many years? No one even could conceive of selling a teaching of Lord Chaitanya. Who's going to buy it? $5. Impossible. Of course, $5 then was a lot more than $5 today. So, but then gradually pushing, trying, thinking, it started. Yeah? It started. Same with Gurukul. Tough job. Toughest job in the whole society. Because it doesn't make money, you see. If you can make money, then your process, your department will become big, fast. And if it doesn't make money, well, you can just hang on a rope for a few years. Most difficult thing. Therefore, you've got to keep plugging away, strictly, and you'll get the result.
Your principle is time, place, and circumstance.
My principle?
You would explain the principle of time, place, and circumstance. That when you can't do what Prabhupada wanted you to do second best, or you can't institute his program. What I'm saying is that it may be difficult initially to institute Prabhupada's program, and someone on that principle may say, well, now it's time to change.
No, because you're not forced to change. You have to force it. Just like that's management. Just like on the street. You can't force the English government to allow you to chant down the street. You just can't do it, because you're not the government. They won't listen to you like that. You may try in courts, you keep on trying, but you are forced to accept some other position. But in this principle, you can force it to work that way. It's simply a question of management. Therefore, the GBC this year made a resolution that every zone will take its best man and make him, headmaster or something? Some big position in Gurukul. We already did that. Take the best man. Why? Because it's management. It's a management decision. This thing with the chanting is not a management decision. You've got no choice. But this thing with Gurukul is a management decision, because there are qualified persons. But generally they're out making money or managing something. Therefore you don't put them in the Gurukul, because management decision says it's not so important. But it is essentially important. Otherwise the whole Varnashram structure falls down. And we won't be able to establish it. As long as one has corporate structure in his mind, then who cares about Varnashram system? Who cares about Gurukul kids? All we need is people to join the movement and make money. We don't need kids, grow up, become brahmanas, who cares? Doesn't matter. We'll just get new people to join all the time, and then we'll send them out and they'll make money, and we'll be happy. Money's great, I got nothing against money. We like to make it ourselves. But not at the cost of the essential principles of this movement. So long you can make piles of money, we love it. But not at the cost of the essential principles of this movement, this Brahminical culture. Yes?
When Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he had his marts or ashrams, he had only brahmacharis and sannyasis staying. No grahastas, no ladies. But then Prabhupada changed that, and as you mentioned, he also invited ladies to come in and initiated, he married them. So did he not change some kind of thing? So for the institutional arrangement goes compared to what the spiritual master used to do?
Yes, but it was under the order of the spiritual master. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also initiated all kinds of ladies and gave them Brahminical initiations. Yeah. He also had in his temples, sometimes the ladies were there doing work. If you go, the retired widows are also living in Gaudiya Math temples. I don't think you're knowing all the Gaudiya Math temples. It is not actually Prabhupada's concoction. It was going on before. They were engaged in many valuable services. Just like Prabhupada's sister was initiated by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and she always was in the temples cooking for the sannyasis. This was her life and soul. Prabhupada told me that personally. He said, she was sitting there and she said, her life and soul was to cook for the sannyasis. How can you reject that service? Just because someone's a woman. How can you reject that? Cannot do that. And it has been going on. We have had in our Krishna consciousness movement, the creator of the Sankirtan movement, the book distribution movement, the Sri Janavi Devi, as we explained yesterday. She's a woman. Don't forget that. Prabhupada didn't concoct anything. And besides that, even if he did something new, he is this Sampradaya Acharya. That makes everything very different. He is the Sampradaya Acharya. He is that person who was predicted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He is that person even predicted by Lord Nityananda Prabhu. He is the personification of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Therefore, he could do so many things. He didn't actually concoct anything. This giving of the Brahmanical thread to unqualified persons who became qualified was started by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Don't we expect some acharya to emerge who will again have to do some additions as Prabhupada? This is not, I wasn't saying that was concoction. But Prabhupada adjusted things as he was preaching in the West under different circumstances.
That's okay, but Prabhupada said, I have given you everything. I have given you the structure, now you fill it in. He didn't say, I've given you 90%, you can fill in the other 10% of the structure. He said, I've given you all the structure, now you fill it in. There may be in the future somebody who is very extraordinarily qualified, maybe. But what could he do better? Can you name something? Somebody may say like this, I know they say like this, but just name something that will be done better than what Prabhupada did. Just name it. Name something that Prabhupada did that has to be adjusted anywhere in the world. Anybody?
Maybe he'll readjust it again to Vedic principles. For example, the sannyasi never performed the yajna, or I think it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that Prabhupada performed 5 marriages. So maybe some acharya would come and change it back.
Well, we already don't perform marriages. Prabhupada performed marriages because nobody even knew how to do a fire sacrifice. Therefore, for the sake of his disciples, he did a marriage, because do the needful. There was nobody else to do the fire yajna, so he did it. Later on, as soon as there was someone to do the fire yajna, he stopped doing it. But that doesn't mean Acharya, spiritual master, it is his business to find the suitable. He is in charge of this brahmachari there. He was supposed to make sure that the brahmachari, if he wanted to get married, got married. But Prabhupada in 1975 in Denver was sitting in Richard Nixon's old car, driving down the road, and he said, now I will not make any more arrangements for marriages. If you want to get married, you have to find your own wife and go live outside. Huh? He was saying it in relation to one devotee who's in my zone right now, so we're not going to mention any names. He said, if you want to get married, you can go outside, find your own wife, and then live outside and work and donate half your income to the society. So Prabhupada already established that as a principle. What other principle? It's just a question of knowledge. It's just a question of knowing these things. That's all. Prabhupada gave everything, everywhere, under all time, places, and circumstances. Nothing more to be given. And all that we have with all these changes is big, big concoctions which cause huge disturbances in our society. That's all. Whenever somebody comes up with something new and better, what happens? Whole society becomes a havoc. We've seen it all the time. Every time there's some so-called reform, everything becomes a mess. Because it's already perfect. It's just a question of you fitting into that perfectness. Yes.
You're talking about how important it is to establish varnashram. So everyone will agree that there always is a certain amount of enthusiasm that's generated to hear this. But then there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of consensus or even practical knowledge how to go about it or even what it is exactly. So that it just seems like it sounds like a great idea, but then when it comes to practically instituting it or knowing what to do to bring it about,
So just start. Just start. Read Prabhupada's books. Be sincere. Just start. It'll happen. You'll make it happen. You know what's right. When you're starting, you may go off a little bit this way, you may go off a little bit that way, but when you try to make the whole thing work, you'll be forced to drag it and pull it together. There's only one way it works. Yeah. It's a system. Yes?
I'd like to point out that doing things properly begins from faith. If you have faith in Prabhupada.
He has a bad voice. He says doing things properly begins with faith. If you have prayed from Prabhupada's instructions.
If you have faith that Prabhupada had the vision for 10,000 years at this time, then you'll believe when he says that everything is there. And then it's just a matter of careful study, careful analysis and introspection, and then determined application.
He said if you have faith that Prabhupada gave the proper principles for the next 10,000 years, then you'll have faith that what he gave was absolutely perfect and correct. More or less. I didn't remember everything perfectly. And that's exactly right. If you've got faith that Prabhupada is giving everything for the next 10,000 years, and Prabhupada has given everything perfectly, then everything becomes very easy. Because you just simply keep trying. You got Prabhupada's books, you have Prabhupada's instructions, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, you just keep on trying and everything will work. You just have to have that initial, absolute conviction in Prabhupada. So many persons talk big words about Prabhupada. But when it comes down to having faith in what Prabhupada wanted, then all of a sudden big words disappear. Prabhupada wanted this Varnashram structure. Otherwise, why he talked about it all the time? Otherwise, why he made Varnashram college? Why so many talks? And after a while in his room there, and the devotees were saying, but, Prabhupada said, just forget it, you'll never understand. Then they take that instruction as absolute. Just forget it, okay. Then they go preaching to everybody. Just forget it. Prabhupada said, just forget it, you'll never understand it. Just like this statement, Vaishnavas are above Varnashram. So Vaishnavas are above Varnashram, but Prabhupada never said you're a Vaishnava. He said Vaishnavas are pure devotees who are doing this and doing this and doing this. He never walked up to you and said you are a Vaishnava. You may not be. And even if you are, still you'll act within the Varnashram system. Even if you are, you'll still act within the Varnashram system. Absolutely. Yeah? Maharaj Parikshit wasn't a Vaishnava. Arjuna wasn't a Vaishnava. Maharaj Yudhisthira wasn't a Vaishnava. Lord Chaitanya, they acted within the system perfectly. Just to say you're a Vaishnava, therefore you don't need the Varnashram system, is some kind of absolute total insanity. Yet I've heard it. I've heard it preached. But it's ridiculous. Lord Chaitanya wasn't a Vaishnava.
There's different definitions of Vaishnava. Prabhupada translates that anyone who chants maybe the Lord even once is considered a Vaishnava.
Therefore, he's transcendental to the Varnashram system immediately. Isn't it? Anybody, he says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that anybody who chants the name of the Lord even once, he's a Vaishnava. So therefore I say, then he's transcendental immediately to the system, isn't it? In Varnashram system, you go around and you get people to chant Hare Krishna, Then immediately, as soon as they chant Hare Krishna, they're out of the system. And pretty soon you're left with no system. Then you need a corporate structure in order to organize everybody. Yes.
Actually, that comes from the Upadeshamrita. And in the Upadeshamrita, it's stated that there are different levels of devotees. Krishneti Asagiritam Manasati.
Yeah, we know this. What's your question?
So, I mean, the point is, just to answer that, is that there are different levels of devotees. Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that anyone who chants once...
What's the question?
Well, do you accept what he's saying?
That what he's saying?
Right.
I didn't accept what he's saying. That's why I maybe said what I said, because we have a point to make here. There are certainly different levels of devotees. Does that mean then we don't need a Varnashram system? To use the Shastra to prove this point is practically demoniac. If you use the Shastra to prove the point that you need a corporate structure to manage ISKCON, that's demoniac. Now what do you say?
What do you mean by corporate structure?
I mean this normal system of management that we've all learned in the Western countries, that we, do things like board meetings and this and that.
No meetings.
Huh?
No meetings.
I didn't say that. You know very well what I mean. Yeah.
I want to, as Prabhupada said, his books are like a law books for next 10,000 years. So Prabhupada said, so we had to have faith. And as a disciple, I accept, yes, for 10,000 years. These are the law books, that means his conscience is there. But we also know the nature of the material world. As you were explaining how Prabhupada is not with us for 5, 6, 7 years, and things are becoming difficult to maintain the track. We know the Gaudiya Math, how it fall apart. And we had this disciplic success.
How they don't chant Hare Krishna, some of them.
Unbroken chain of spiritual masters and disciples is always there. And each one of them had an organization, or a lot of,
No, very few organizations.
So Prabhupada also has this Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON movement, and things are becoming difficult to keep things on the right track. So how are we going to have that faith that in this material world for next 10,000 years, this is it.
Then we're going to keep on preaching that you got to read Prabhupada's books and learn them. That's how it's going to be. If these are the law books for 10,000 years, does anybody here doubt that? You do?
No, not as a law book I accept, but
Then you keep reading these books for 10,000 years.
I'm saying the ISKCON, the way it is designed, and the ISKCON as an organization.
It is designed and organized strictly according to the principles that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati gave, Srila Prabhupada gave, and ultimately it was designed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's desires. And it will last for 10,000 years, no problem.
And they also read Prabhupada's books, and
yeah, everybody reads Prabhupada's books.
So they are not understanding it, so?
They're not?
Well, they made some point.
Yeah, and we defeated that point.
But they are reading Prabhupada's books.
Yes.
So you
I don't think it's very nice of you to put them on the spot like this. I don't believe Vipramukha Swami is making the other point. I just used his question to stomp on a point. It's not like this was against what he said. I just took it as a stepping stone to stomp on his point, to come to a point.
Harikesa Swami is my best friend.
No. So just by reading our books, how are we going to? We may not understand.
Yes, because not everybody understands what's in the books. Therefore, there have to be leaders who know what actually Prabhupada said, what actually Prabhupada wanted, and who can take what's in the books and understand really what is going on. And then they have to preach it and make sure it stays on the line. Everything lasts due to present acharyas being very strongly and specifically keeping things on the line. Everything lasts that way. Otherwise, if our whole society's leaders go off in different directions, then the whole society will go off, regardless of what's in Prabhupada's books. Because you can take anything and you can manipulate it. I can take any verse and manipulate it. The Mayavadis do it all the time. It's no problem. You can take any point in the books and use it to prove any point you want. All it takes is a little word jugglery. But one who knows can immediately use logic from the books to defeat that word jugglery and show how it is a complete nonsense. I don't care what anyone says. You've got the basic point. It's either corporate structure or varnashram, take your pick. That's all there is to it. There is no third kind of a system. You've got material organization, you've got Krishna's organization. There's nothing else. Either you organize ISKCON or you don't organize ISKCON. So what are you going to do? To organize, you need a system. Where do you get the system? Either it comes from your own head or it comes from Krishna. Now defeat that. I defy anyone.
We don't want to defeat. We want some.
This is logic. You defeat that logic.
We don't want to defeat. We want some practical hints how to go about it.
No, but first we make this point. First you accept, then you get the hints.
Accept.
I need you are a great soul. Yes.
So this might be a controversial, but you're asking for some controversy. So
I don't want controversy. I want that logic defeated.
Prabhupada established the GBC body, and from the GBC authorities, we're all getting a particular system of management and carrying it out. And some of that involves corporate structures and so on.
Yes.
So,
Therefore GBC body has to get itself together, doesn't it?
why hammer us?
I gotta hammer somebody. That defeated me. Two. Yes.
It would seem though that even though many leaders who do know the philosophy is in Brahma's books, there will still be quite many controversies and lack of consensus.
There may be, but I defy anybody, leader or not, defeat that argument I just gave. I'm fully confident. We have very intelligent persons here. Can any one of you, even just from logic, put aside your personal beliefs, just from the platform of any kind of logic you can conceive of, defeat that argument?
Well, it seems that you're inferring that corporate structure is antithetical to the Varnashram system.
I say any material concocted structure, whatever it is. It's not antithetical, but it's your concoction.
But isn't within my own concoctions, aren't some of the traces of the Varnashram system still there?
But if there's a choice to make between traces or the real thing, just like if you're hungry and I'll give you some traces of ice cream on your hand, or I give you a choice, I give you some traces of ice cream on your hand, or I'll give you a big ice cream cone. What are you going to take? The traces?
If GBC body is accepted as a final...
Wait, don't get into this.
No. Well then, if there are more people willing...
We're still discussing. We're on the discussion platform. Nothing's absolute, nothing's final. Whatever you hear this year, next year will be something different, until we finally get the whole show together. Oh wait, you're Swami's always first.
Ultimately, all knowledge is coming from the Vedas.
Yes.
So how do you know that the corporate structure, which is working, isn't a science of management which originally comes from the Vedas? How do you know you cannot apply it within society?
It may be, but if it does come from the Veda,
It's a
It may be so, but that corporate structure is specifically for the Vaishyas. That is not meant, because any corporate structure that doesn't start off with Brahmanas is going to fail.
Well, it all starts off with Brahmanas because there are spiritual leaders in the society, and under them there may be various structures to organize them.
Yes, there may be various structures, but that's under the Kshatriya's head. Those are substructures, sub-organizations. But the basic one we've got to have.
So there's a GBC, the spiritual leaders, and there's managers, and then they organize a corporate structure.
Maybe, but we don't want to do that. They sure. Yes, if you accept, this is of course the problem here. This does not defeat the logic, but the problem is, as soon as you say GBC and then everybody else, then of course we could do whatever we want, couldn't we? We're the GBC, we can just sit down, we can do whatever we want. But that's not very good. We should do what Prabhupada wanted, or we should do according to Varnashram principles. Yeah. So we could certainly do it, and that would be bona fide. But I'm saying I don't think we should.
It's like Prabhupada said that Kshatriyas should be taught to manage. So maybe there can be a Varnashram system, but there'll be different institutions where there'll be principles of management. Is that possible? I mean,
yes, there will be like that. But you must always give the facility for the Brahman to come in and say, wait a minute, this money-making business and power brokerage is not Krishna consciousness. It is simply management. Management may have so many principles. There has to be somebody a little detached from all of this to come in and say, look, we've got to surrender to Krishna.
And people deny that that's the fact. They would never deny that there's not...
No, nobody would... You see, now we're on a subtle point. Now this is the point only Brahmanas can understand. So let's first create some first-class Brahmanas who know our philosophy very well and don't use it to try to prove any points. And then we can discuss these points a little more. We can just go on, of course, giving this and this and this and that, but you'll always come up with more and more of these things, because this is just management. You got right here first.
The same question.
If it's the same, we already finished it. Yeah.
Well, you just pointed out that the Brahmins should advise the Kshatriyas, and we have the example here of King Venu who didn't want any advice, so the Brahmins had to go together in person, which is quite extreme. So how is it that you're saying about the Varnashram institution, but we can't even figure out how to apply it within our own society? We
can figure it out. There's no problem. It's a question of accepting it. And it just takes a little time and a little more discussion. Therefore, we are discussing. Brahminical quality is patience and tolerance. It took a long time before those rishis got to that point. A long time. We're only just a couple of years. Give some time. Tolerance, absolutely required. You lose all your Brahminical qualities by being intolerant. Yeah. No, there's no officially banned anything. There's just Prabhupada's instruction. Now, according to your faith and devotion, that makes it official or not. Yeah.
According to the Varnashram structure, would the GBC be considered a Brahminical or a Kshatriya?
Brahminical. Yes.
Maharaj, could you perhaps list some of these mantras that are popular in use, perhaps, that's bona fide for our benefit?
They may or may not be bona fide. If you chant, for instance, Gaur Nityananda Bol, what's unbona fide about it? You've got Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. How can it be unbona fide? But the point is that Prabhupada wanted a certain kind of thing. I remember once in 1971, he was sitting in his room. I happened to be very fortunate to sit there. And he mentioned, this chanting of the Sri Krishna Chaitanya mantra is much more powerful than the Hare Krishna mantra. I said, Prabhupada, wonderful. Then we should immediately start chanting rounds of the Sri Krishna Chaitanya mantra? And he said, no. Because Lord Chaitanya's instruction is to chant Hare Krishna. And that's the basis, right there. And thus one can understand the whole thing. Okay, it's time to go. I don't want to keep up everybody. You have to take breakfast and go out. Hare Krishna.